pitched in. We were confident we'd be able to find him in short order, and because of that teamwork, we did. So we were notified by Detroit. They had received a tip that the vehicle had been seen. We were notified at 23:05, which is 11:05 p.m. Our fugitive folks arrived on scene with Detroit at 23:25, which is 11:25. Just 20 minutes after the call, they arrived downtown Detroit to be with Detroit. Detroit had seen the car, had secured the scene, had established a perimeter, done some great police work. Ultimately, at approximately 1:30 in the morning, the two suspects were taken into custody at 11 Bellevue in Detroit in a commercial vehicle. They were in an art studio within that building that has multiple kinds of partitions, if you will, in that building. They were taken in custody, as I said, at about 1:30 in the morning. Our fugitive apprehension team took custody and possession of them, and they were formally lodged in our jail, where they remain at about 0300, about 3 o'clock in the morning. So they are in our jail. All three of them, the son and both parents, they are segregated, each individually in isolation. We have advanced watch on them. There is no indicator that any of them, we always have every person that comes in an intake evaluated by counselors in classification to determine if there's any threats to themselves or anyone else. There was no indication that any of them were suicidal, but out of an abundance of caution, our amazing corrections team is doing suicide watches on all three of them. So they are in custody and again in isolation. So that's a good step. The further on as it goes to this, we believe, and I've had multiple communications with Chief White of Detroit, our great partner, and another, again, shout out to his team for what they did, how they did it. And we've been in conversation and talking about some of the now follow-on information and evidence that we have. We believe they were assisted in that location to get there, to get in, and we're gathering that information, and we're going to have the totality of that done fairly soon and present that to our prosecutor for potential charges for either aiding and abetting or obstruction of justice. So that will be a determination by our prosecutor at some point in the near future, and that is a work in progress with all the other works in progress. Again, you know, every time I get a chance, I want to throw out there to the public, if they have any information on either of these two or the individual, the shooter, please either contact us at OCSO, Oakland County Sheriff's Office, ocso@oakgov.com, or call us at 248-858-4911. Any information, again, about either the actions in the school, preceding the actions in the school, or the follow-on as it relates to the two parents.
Did either of the parents say anything, either on that drive from Detroit to the jail or once they arrived at the jail? Have they said anything to you?
Probably at this point, we're not going to talk about any either spontaneous utterances or discussions, because that will now become part of any evidence that may be presented. So that information will be turned over to the prosecutor, and anything about that will be forthcoming as it relates to, you know, trial activities.
The Crumley's attorneys basically described this as a miscommunication and said they were planning to turn themselves in. Is that a possibility?
Well, all I know is this, is that when we were informed we had an active warrant for them, there was some communication that came into one of our detectives that said that they were going to arrange for their arrest to turn themselves in. And, you know, that's fine. We don't wait for that. When we have serious charges like felonies, you can turn yourself in, you can go to court, you can come to any one of our substations, but we're going to go look for you immediately. And so we triggered, once the warrant was in hand, a full activation of looking for them, because there's a lot more tools at our disposal once we have a warrant. And we had been looking for them prior to that, but it was in a much more limited fashion, and that's the most I'm going to say about our investigative techniques. But you know, then later in the morning, we had communication that the couple was not responding to texts or phone calls of their attorney. So again, to us, that's irrelevant. We're looking for them. If they show up, fine. But we're not going to sit at the front desk and tap our fingers until they come in. We were out actively looking for them, working with our partners, and they were taken into custody before that question was asked or answered. Were they actually going to do it? I don't know. But given that they were hiding in a warehouse in Detroit, it certainly raises my eyebrows.
Why were they in Detroit to begin with?
That's part of the questions, obviously, why they were there, why they were in a commercial building in that form and fashion. We had located their other vehicle at a different location, prior to the warrant even being issued. As I said, we began a process of doing what we could before any warrants were in hand to look for them. And we found one other family vehicle at a different location, but they weren't there and there was no connectivity to them being there at that moment.
Sheriff, can you give some clarity as to how you know that they were hiding? Couldn't they just say they were in the building? Were they specifically ducked away or anything like that?
Well, when the tip came in, the person was apparently outside smoking and they pretty much ran away. And obviously, the way, and I'm not going to get into specifics, but I think where they were and how they were seems to support the position. They were hiding and they weren't looking for surrendering at that point.
Sure. What are the criminal ramifications for the people that helped them into that art gallery, and what are they looking at crime-wise? Have the people that helped them been taken into custody, and are they cooperating?
Well, we obviously don't have any charges at this point, but that's part of the investigation. And ultimately, if there are charges that are applicable, that will be the prosecutor's decision. So we're trying to put together as much detailed information on that as it relates to that. Suffice to say, we have enough early indications that clearly somebody helped them into that location and made it available to them. And it was after it was publicly announced that there were warrants for them.
How much do you know about their whereabouts from Friday morning when you made this ATM withdrawal to the point where their cell phone shut off to when they're discovered? So I know that they were in Rochester Hills, and then they were found in Detroit. But do you know what happened in between, where they were, where they tried to go?
We don't, again, have a whole lot of their movements because the last time our detectives actually saw them physically in person was when we executed search warrants on the home when the child in question was the suspect. So we were going to the house to seize anything of evidentiary value to the case at the school shooting. And at that point, there was no indication that the parents may or may not have been involved. It was purely an execution of a search warrant for evidence related to the shooting. That was the last time our detectives saw them. As soon as the prosecutor gave some indication that there would be potentially charges, our detectives began to do what we call a packet to prepare for if there's charges, where they might go, and began to do what we could to look for them short of what the expanded capabilities are when you have an actual warrant, either a search warrant or an arrest warrant.
It's kind of an interesting situation with the whole family together in your jail. Do they get to talk to
No.
their son?
No talking, no communication. They're all three in isolation.
Does that change over time? I mean, since he's a
No.
minor, or no?
No, on a variety of levels. First, we would segregate male and female prisoners. And secondly, we would segregate juveniles charged as from adults. So on all three levels, they will never be interacting.
Does the person who called 911 get the reward?